Welcome back to Untaming Masculinity, the podcast where we tackle issues relevant to men and their journeys to reclaim their masculinity. I'm Dan, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host and good friend Brad. What's going on, man?
Not much, man. It's Memorial Day today, so just a good opportunity to remember those who came and gave their lives for this country. But other than that, just spent the day cleaning out my garage, used the pressure washer, very satisfying endeavor. But yeah, things are good over here. What about you?
Yeah, pretty chill weekend. We had a cookout yesterday, so I spent all day outside in the sun and in a pool, which was very nice considering awesome. The change in weather we've had here lately. And then just a real chill weekend. It's kind of like the calm before the storm for me because school will be starting up my final semester here in a couple days. So it's time to buckle down for that last class.
Yeah? Oh man.
Yeah. Getting excited.
Is this the last one?
This is it. By August, I will graduate.
Awesome. Also, you've got other events coming up here in the next few days.
Yep. I will be heading up to New Hampshire here in a few days, probably about a week and a half to get a nice hike in, nice backpacking trip.
How's your calf?
Looking forward to that. It's getting there.
Yeah.
I pushed a little hard in the gym on Saturday, I guess, and just kind of still feeling out where the guardrails are. You know what I mean? We talked about that in an episode a long time ago, but I'm trying to figure out where to live right now.
So hard to not push yourself. Oh my god.
That's it. And you know, with knocking off running, I feel like I have to do more in the gym, and it's tough.
Yeah.
So.
Well, rest up, man. You got adventures awaiting.
Yeah, I'm getting really excited. We were actually just talking about backpacking trips before we started recording. Yeah. So I got this one, and then if all goes well here, I got a couple other ideas for later this summer.
Yeah. And something we kind of threw out. So, I mean, our previous guest and our good friend Andy, he sent us a message the other day saying, hey, how about some of the guys going on the backpacking trip, which you and Andy are both going, and I'm not because I'm a loser. But where you guys have a conversation about it, kind of a campfire style chat. So look out for that in the next couple of weeks, everybody.
Yeah, that'll be a fun conversation for sure. So, to get to the topic for today, we were tossing around a couple of ideas, and I think you had a pretty good one that we want to talk about. So you want to kick it off a little bit?
Yeah, it's the concept of romancing your woman. It's something that I'm not going to sit here and pretend I'm any good at. If you were to ask my wife, one of the things that I have to tell you a funny story. She was going through something, I can't remember. Oh my goodness. It was when I was in college. I had a little book that a friend made with just photos and whatnot of some girl that we were all friends with. And I wrote something in there. There's a quote saying, my future wife will call me the most romantic man alive. And my wife looked at me and she started laughing because her and I both know that is absolutely not the case. I don't do nearly enough to romance her. I don't do nearly enough to show her how much I appreciate her. It's a work in progress, something I'm cognizant of and working on. But I felt like it was worth a conversation about how we romance our woman, how we show her that she's important to us, and our responsibility and obligation as men to make sure that our women feel that way. So kick it off. Run with this one, Dan.
Yeah, that's a very broad topic for sure.
Yeah.
The first thing that comes to mind is that as a married man or even somebody in a serious relationship, the concept of making sure you prioritize the time with your woman and making sure that you prioritize her above the other stuff in life. And that's not to say that, hanging out with the boys isn't important or, working out or whatever. It's all important stuff, but she has to be an equally important part of your life. And as a married man with children, you can probably agree that as you progress through life, that becomes harder and harder and harder as your responsibilities build and build. So as we progress, this topic becomes exceedingly more important because our time becomes so limited. And it's very easy to have things slip away. So for instance, excuse me, I go through phases with my wife of, we're really into making sure that the relationship is solid. And then we seem to get to a point where we feel really good about it and we back off the gas. And then all of a sudden, 6 months later, we're going, oof, things are starting to go back to a bad place. Like we got to reinvest here. Yeah. And it seems to be this cyclical wave. And I imagine that it's like that with most relationships. Yeah. But what I will say is every time we hit that downslope, we seem to catch it a little bit sooner and a little bit sooner because we were putting the work in on the upslopes. So that, if you're familiar with the concept of noise, it starts to peter out over time. The highs get a little less high and the lows get a little less low, and you get to this kind of equilibrium point. And I feel like that's where we're getting to, where we used to have very high highs and very low lows in the past. And now, the relationships has started to get to a point where, and it sounds like I'm saying it's getting boring. It's not, but we're just getting to the point where we don't have to re-engage as much to get to that good equilibrium point. And we don't let it get so bad that we have to, really do a lot of work to get it back up to where it needs to be.
No, I get what you mean. It's interesting when you first start a relationship with a woman and you try so hard to impress her. You bring her flowers, you make her dinner, you wow her, you charm her, you're mysterious, you're all these things that every man wants to be, and you think of all these attributes, and that initially draws a woman to us. And then you fall in love, get into a relationship, get married, move in together, you have a couple kids, and that mystery goes away. You're not a mysterious man anymore. She hears you snore. She knows if you haven't brushed your teeth in the morning. She can tell if you haven't cleaned up after yourself after dinner. Or my favorite is if I fart in the house, she'll walk in the room right after I do it, like every time, and say, "Brad, you're disgusting." And so a lot of those ideas of romance seemingly go away. But like you said, with this idea of noise, the highs are high, the lows are low, they start to balance out. And identifying what we need to work on as men and romancing our women, really to me comes down to this idea of we have to be able to fight for her. And what I mean by that is coming back to John Eldridge's Wild at Heart. I know I've talked about this book a lot. It's an incredible book, highly recommended. One of the concepts that he believes is that every man needs a beauty to rescue, right? You need not necessarily the damsel in distress, but every man wants a beauty to rescue. And he sums it up really well on his website. And I feel like I've read from his website before, but it's just so well put. He says, "It's hard to think of a classic men's movie that doesn't have a beauty to rescue scene and the romantic thank you that follows. Nothing can get our attention like a beautiful woman. Again, God made us this way. Back in the beginning of our story, Eve was created from Adam's side, and none of us have recovered from the surgery. Men are haunted by the beauty. Where the confusion begins is when we turn to the woman not to offer our strength, but rather to looking to her for our validation. Certain disaster follows." This is the key point. Learning to fight for the beauty is not only one of man's core passions, it is one of life's greatest joys. It's a pretty powerful line. So this idea of learning to fight for the beauty, like romancing, fighting for her attention, fighting for her love, this goes beyond validation. We're not seeking her validation. We are truly showing her that she's meaningful to us. And like you said, you find this stasis. It comes down to this idea of what can we do, when we've been in a relationship for a while to reclaim that so that she knows that we are fighting for her. So I guess, Dan, what do you think?
You're talking about fighting for her and that kind of thing. And the word prioritization came to mind. And when I talk about prioritization, I truly mean that prioritization above all else in your life. So I tell my kids all the time, right? I've said it before here a lot of times. I got 2 young teenage girls, and I strongly believe that the way I treat their mother is very important for them to see how a man should treat a woman. And to that point, I've told them since they were very little that while I love them very much, my wife, their mother, is the most important woman in my life, and she always will be. And she is more important than my children, which is a tough thing for little kids to understand. But as they've gotten older, my girls have come to completely understand what I mean by that. They understand that they are my blood and they will forever hold a piece of my heart, but I voluntarily chose to spend the rest of my life with my wife. And that means so much to me. It means to me that is the person in this world that I put above all others, and that I prioritize their happiness and their safety and their security because I voluntarily chose that. It's not something that was, I'm going to use a word and I don't mean it the way it sounds, but it's not something that was forced upon me in the way that, children and that responsibility is given to you. and I don't mean that in a bad way, that I love my girls. They will always be very, very important to me. But my wife was here before them, my wife is here during them, and my wife will be there after them.
Yeah.
Once they're fully grown and out the house and on their own and fully functioning adults, my wife's still going to be right there by my side. And it is important to me that relationship is the strongest one I have in my life.
Yeah.
And again, it's not to downplay the relationship with the children, but it's just different and it has a stronger priority. So when you say fight for it, that's what I'm fighting for. I am fighting for that longevity, that till death do us part bit. That's very important to me. And it is my strong conviction that if you put that level of importance in, you will have a stronger relationship with your wife going down the road.
You're absolutely right. Like, you use the word force, and I know that was not necessarily like what you meant by that. Maybe it's an obligation or duty because, you like they came into the world. You didn't really.
Yeah. And it's right. It's definitely the wrong word. It's just, it wasn't I couldn't think of the right word. It's listen, my children were a decision that we made. I love them to death, but that responsibility is very different than voluntarily choosing to spend your life with somebody.
Yeah, you think of that, and there's nothing wrong with that. Obviously, we talk about how important our kids are, but at the same time, you left your house as a young man. You met this woman that you fell in love with. You chose at that moment to start a life with her. You told yourself when you met her and you fell in love with her that I will protect this woman at all costs. I will make this woman happy. I want to spend the rest of my life with this woman. That's a pretty powerful statement when you think about marriage, when you think about, us selecting a wife to spend the rest of our life with. We choose that. We commit to ourselves and to them that 1, we will take care of them, 2, that we will provide for them, and 3, that we'll do everything in our power to make them as happy as possible, Mm-hmm. And what's so wild is you think about after a few years of marriage, how quickly that's forgotten. How careers, stressors, kids, coming back to the idea of kids, all those things take away from this idea that when you met this woman, that you were going to do everything and anything for her, that you're going to create a life for her, that you're going to give her everything that you want. So the question therefore becomes, what can we do as men, whether we've been in a relationship for 6 months or 40 years, to, whether you want to call it bring the fire back, to make sure that we're prioritizing our women, that we are romancing them in a way so that they feel, 1, validated, 2, appreciated, and 3, just as important, an equal partner in a relationship with us as men.
Yeah, if I knew all the answers to all those questions, I would be making a lot of money right now.
Yeah, exactly. You have the perfect marriage. You'd be you'd be on TV circuit and podcast circuit, of course.
Right.
Write some books.
Well, one of the important things I believe, and that I've empirically shown to work, is understanding your wife or your girlfriend or the woman in your life and her response to things. So there's a book out there, which I'm sure most of you heard. It's written by Gary Chapman. It's called The 5 Love Languages. And those are physical touch, words of affirmation, quality time, gift giving, and acts of service. So you have to figure out what works for the woman in your life. Is she a woman who appreciates gifts? Is she just want quality time with you? Does she like physical touch? That kind of thing. I know, for instance, my wife, she really does not want gifts. She, everybody says, "Oh, my wife says don't buy me gifts for my birthday and Valentine's Day and stuff," and then gets upset when I don't. My wife literally does not get upset. As long as I give her a day where I take care of the house and I make decisions on where we're going to go eat, and I take care of the kids, run them around or do whatever, and just kind of give her the day off and give her that act of service, she's the happiest woman in the world. So it's understanding exactly what gets to her and making sure that you're conscious of that, and that she knows that what makes her happy and what fulfills her. And likewise, having the conversation about, if you want to keep the relationship strong, we're talking about 2 separate but very related things, right? It's how do you keep your wife happy and in a good mood, but how do you keep the relationship strong? It's understanding first and foremost what serves her, but then also having the conversation about what serves you. So I have a physical touch love language, and I like to hold hands. I like to, have her snuggled up next to me when we're driving down the street or whatever it is. And her understanding that and me understanding her and finding common ground where we can kind of meet and serve each other to make the relationship work. But first and foremost, it's about prioritizing it too, right? You can have the perfect life, quote unquote, where you make good money, you got a good job, your kids are well adjusted, you're running around to all of their events and blah, blah, blah. But your marriage is dormant because neither one of you is intentionally paying attention to each other. And you're just doing the things that you're quote unquote supposed to do. You're going out to date night. You're going away for a weekend here or there, but you're not serving each other in the way that you each want to be served.
You hit a lot of very salient points. And one thing that I struggled with, coming back to the concept of love languages early in my marriage and up until fairly recently, was I didn't listen to what my wife needed or wanted. Mm-hmm. I tried to give her what I thought that she needed or wanted. And there's a massive critical distinction there. Just because you think your wife needs X or that she wants Y, that does not mean that those are the things that she wants or needs. In fact, I would argue that they're probably absolutely not the things that she wants or needs. Case in point is growing up, my parents, like the way that my mom would show her love would be to just give us lots of gifts. On Christmas, we just get a ton of just gifts. Some of them were absolute crap. Some of them were good, but there's a lot. On birthdays, we'd get a lot of gifts. Some of them are crap. Some of them are fine. And so when I got married, I thought, on Christmas or her birthday, I'm going to give my wife lots of crap, lots of gifts. If I give her like 10, 11, 12 gifts, she's going to see just how much I love her. And I didn't recognize it at first. And I didn't recognize it for a while, but that didn't mean anything to her. She didn't care about gifts, much like your wife. She didn't care about that crap. She doesn't want little doodads and slippers and hand towels and body lotion and all this bull crap that we oftentimes convince ourselves that our women want. What she wanted was she wanted quality time, and she appreciates acts of service. To my wife, it would mean more to her if I were to let her have a day to herself where I'll let her sleep in, I'll pick her at breakfast, I'll take the kids and we'll go somewhere so she can just have some time to herself. That means more to her than me going and buying her a watch or whatever, because it shows that I understand what she needs and am trying to appeal to that. Not what I think she needs, but truly understanding her. So this boils down to the idea of how do we start to understand what our women need? And we have to talk to them. If we haven't had those conversations about what they need, I would strongly recommend taking the five love languages test. I would strongly recommend doing that. There are all kinds of online resources to allow you to do so, to at least give you a baseline understanding of what she needs. Set your ego aside. Yeah, you might make a lot of money. You want to flaunt it. You want to show her what that means. Yeah, you might be there and you might like snuggling with her. Maybe she doesn't like that. Understand what she needs. And then just like Dan said earlier, find a way to meet in the middle, because there are things you need as well. And if you can communicate with her in such a way to help her understand what you need, while also giving it to her and what she needs, that's where that happy medium is reached.
So there's a few things in there. First is, absolutely, I can't tell you how many holidays I spent trying to get the perfect gift or gifts and
always
getting the, thank you.
Yep.
When it didn't mean anything. But the other thing that I really want to talk about here too is, we're talking a lot about how to make our wives happy, how to build the relationship better by finding out what makes them tick and what makes them happy. But it's important to point out here, right? Relationships are two-way streets.
Yes.
Relationships are not just about you doing everything you need to do to make the woman in your life happy. There is reciprocation that is, dare I say, expected to make a good relationship work. If you're just giving and giving and giving and you're not getting, you're not in a relationship. You're in a service. And you need to, realistically think about that and how to fix that. A relationship will have give and take. And it's not tit for tat. It's not, well, I did this for you, so you're going to do this for me. It's, you may have months and months of giving and not any getting, and then vice versa. But you're there to support each other. And that's where I feel like a lot of men make mistakes, because they get so infatuated with the idea of, I have this beautiful, awesome woman in my life and I can't lose her. To what end? Are you going to lose yourself because you can't lose this wonderful, fantastic woman. And if she's just going to take and take and take, how wonderful and fantastic is she really? I know that kind of took a left turn from what we were talking about a little bit, but it's very important to point out that a relationship is acts of servitude from both sides. It's being responsible to each other. And if only one party is responsible, then you've got a big issue there. So you have to be aware of that.
I'm really glad you went in that direction, because I wanted to, but I'm glad you just took it now, because that's a very important thing. How many men out there have pedestaled a woman, whether that be their wife, whether that be a girlfriend, putting her on this pedestal, showering her with praise or gifts or affection, never expecting or demanding anything in return?
I would argue we've all done it at least once.
Yeah. Like I've talked about some of the relationships I was in prior to meeting my wife. There was a girl I took to the Caribbean. There was a girl I took to New York City and Disneyland, and I took them on all these trips, and I bought them all this stuff, and they never had to do a thing. There was a trip where one of those trips I went on, I not only paid for her, I paid for her friend to come with us. Myself, I spent thousands of dollars and racked up thousands of dollars of credit card debt, thinking, if I give her these things, if I put her on this pedestal, and if I worship her, she's going to look at me and say, oh, he's a devoted man. He wants me. I want to be with him. Do you know what that resulted in? Her trampling all over me, messing me up psychologically, and putting me in a really dark, twisted, horrible place. I was a cuck, for lack of a better word. 100%. I wasn't happy. She wasn't happy. It was not a functional, thriving relationship, and it ended disastrously. Both of those relationships ended disastrously, because if you put a woman up on this pedestal and you don't treat her as an equal, you're essentially setting the expectation of her that you're beneath her. So how is she going to look at you? How you think of that selfishly? How is a woman going to look at you if you do all these things for her? You raise her up to this level. You never expect anything in return. She's never going to ask it. And you know what happens with those women? They get bored. They move on. They're not happy. They're not fulfilled. And that's a very, very, very important thing, especially in this day and age where men are almost conditioned societally to pedestal women and be, I hate the term, but betas.
Yeah, the flip side to that too is, how many guys have you seen or know that just take and take and take from the relationships they're in? They just expect sex. They just expect availability. They just expect
to show up and dinner be on the table no matter what.
Dinner's is taken care of, right? And she's going to do the dishes afterwards, whatever. And they just take, but they don't give anything back. There has to be give and take on both parts. It's so critical to the happiness of the relationship, because you're going to hit a point in life where you're in a lull and you really need to withdraw from the relationship. And that person has to be willing to give more at that point, because at some point down the line, those roles are going to reverse, and you're going to have to give a lot more when she needs to take, because she's in a needy spot. Maybe somebody's lost a parent. We're getting to that age, unfortunately, in life where that's starting to become reality for friends of ours. And that person takes a lot in that situation, and you need to be able to give unconditionally, knowing that you're going to get it back sometime, some point. But it's not a tit for tat interaction. It's I truly am giving because I truly care about this person. And I truly know that when I need it, they'll be there to support me.
This dives into one of my very favorite topics to discuss. The idea of a covert contract.
Oh, the covert contract. Yes.
Right. So we've talked about this before, right? This comes back that this term was coined by Robert Glover in his book, No More Mr. Nice Guy. And there's this idea that nice guys, which actually is a pretty big subsection of the male population. They're not always nice guys. They're essentially guys who covertly do things to try to get what they want. Will essentially establish what is known as a covert contract with their significant other. And it's defined as this. A covert contract is an unspoken agreement you have within your head between you and someone else. It's what you expect someone to do based on what you're doing for them, or based on what you expect from a relationship, without actually telling them about it. You hope they'll just know. So it's this idea of giving to get. You are giving something to your wife with the expectation of sex or validation or money or whatever that is. You're doing something hoping or assuming that the person on the other end of the conversation is just simply going to know without you communicating that. It's incredibly manipulative. It's incredibly deceitful. And most men are guilty of them all the time. If you think of this in very broad terms, how many times have you looked at your wife and said, "Hey, I love you," with the unspoken expectation of saying, if I tell her this, she will tell me I love you too. We feel good. That in and of itself is a covert contract. You think of all these things where I'm going to do the dishes for my wife with the hope that she's going to have sex with me. Or I am going to tell her, hey, the house better be clean before I get home, expecting that to be done. Well, that's not really a good example of a covert contract because that's not covert. But the idea is you're doing these things with the expectation that somebody at the other end, specifically in a relationship, is going to give you what you want. And that is a very destructive way to build a relationship because it comes back to what Dan was saying. You're the abusive piece of crap husband, or you're the man who pedestals his woman, simply hoping or expecting that they're going to give you what you want without actually having spoken those things.
We've all done it, right? Something as simple as I'm taking my wife out to dinner tonight. I'm going to get laid. That's a covert contract.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
I guarantee you, we've all experienced it. We've all done it, and we've all been frustrated by it. And it's not fair. It's not fair to anyone involved. It's not fair to you. It's not fair to them, right? It's not fair to you because you've got a much higher chance of being disappointed. It's not fair to them because they're quote unquote doing something wrong or not fulfilling the contract and they don't even freaking know about it. So we have to be willing to give ourselves with no return expectation other than I'm in a loving relationship and at some point I'm going to be the recipient of an equal situation. But there's no expectation of when, of how, or what. It's just, I do this because I love my wife, I love our relationship, I value it, and I know that I will benefit from it as well sometime. And it's not even the benefit part. It's just, I love my relationship and I want a strong relationship.
Yeah. Let me give you an example of something that I do for my wife. Like my wife, she needs to sleep. She's an insomniac. She does not sleep ever. Every time I ask her, it's like, hey, what time did you fall asleep last night? Oh, 2. And then she gets up at 6:30 or 7 to make sure her daughter gets to school. She does not sleep. So one of the things that she needs, one, for her mental well-being, but two, just to feel normal, is she needs to have at least one day a week where she can sleep in. So usually that's on Saturdays. So for several years, on Saturday mornings, I'll get up with the kids and I'll let her sleep. And we've done that for a long time. That's kind of been our routine. And here's the thing that's ridiculous about it. When I first started doing that for her, I would get angry or resentful or frustrated because it would be 11 o'clock and she still wasn't awake and she still wasn't out of her room, or 11:30. I'm sitting here thinking, I'm doing all of this for you. What are you doing for me? I'm sitting here wasting my morning. That's a very strong term when I'm spending it with my kids, but I felt that way simply because she could sleep. And it made me feel as if she was being inherently selfish and not giving me what I wanted. And I kept doing it thinking that, okay, she's going to come out and let me have a nap or let me get to go do what I want. And all of that did was harbor resentment and frustration and anger. And I just sat there pissed off. And it really took a little bit of self-awareness and a little bit of her sitting down and talking to me and shaking some sense into me that I had these unspoken expectations of her that were not fair to her and damaged our relationship. If we have all these hidden expectations, all that's going to result in is disaster, regardless. So I had to have a self-realization, take a deep breath and realize this is what she really needs. Like my wife really, really needs this, So I stopped doing it with the expectation of getting a nap or getting time to go to the gym or whatever later and just did it simply because I cared about her. And you know what? I'm a lot happier and I still get to do those things that I wanted to do on a Saturday. Simply because of that mindset shift to take away from myself and truly care about her. So it can be done. Even if there are things you're doing right now where you're like, my gosh, this pisses me off, or I'm expecting this, that, or the other. You can look in the mirror, stop being a jackass, make the changes, and you'll see a tremendous shift almost instantly if you simply can do that.
Yeah. I call it taking on the scoreboard.
Yeah.
Right. It's, you can't keep track. We have similar things in my house, not necessarily the sleep thing, but I remember when the kids were little, I'd come home and she'd toss me one of the kids and be like, here, she needs her diaper changed, or she needs this. I'm like, I just worked all day. And I would get upset because it's like, well, what are you doing? How are you handling this? And little did I realize, she's been working all day too. And she's dealing with dinner, and she's dealing with the dog, and she's dealing with all this other crap, getting the babysitter out of the house when the kids were little, that I don't get to see. And it's not about keeping score. It's about loving your wife and making sure that you take care of her however you can.
Yeah, exactly.
Not get run over by it, not just, every little whim and desire, but making sure that you take care of her in the big picture. So I think that's really it, right? It's making sure that it's romancing your woman isn't necessarily all just roses and chocolates and balloons and all that, expensive dinners and all that crap.
Maybe your wife loves those things, and if so,
maybe your wife loves those things, and believe me, every once in a while, a woman does love to be doted on. I don't care who it is; they love it. But it's really about digging in deeper and understanding what her love language is, and making sure that the relationship itself is on a steadier base, where you're taking care of each other and you're doing it not for the reciprocation, but for the value that you see in the relationship.
Yeah, that's a perfect summary. Most days in our relationships are mundane. We go to work, we come home, we have dinner, we spend some time together, put the kids to bed, rinse and repeat.
Very routine, right?
Yeah.
Everyone's got their own roles too, for the most part, in that day to day.
Within those mundane, routine, normal days, what can you do to really illustrate what Dan talked about? Find ways to serve her, find ways to find an equal balance where she understands what you need as well, so that you can come to a mutual understanding, work together, and really grow your relationship. It's not sexy, but that's really how great relationships are made, and that's the foundation of them. Is what are you doing daily to build consistency?
Hard work and routine are typically not sexy.
Nope.
But that's what gets the job done. So, all right, man.
Cool.
It was a good one.
Yeah, agreed.
We'll wrap it up. So I'm excited because we have got a couple of great guests coming up. I'm not going to drop any names, but one of them especially is probably our first big name guest, and I am very excited to talk to him. We'll be talking to him this week. That episode will come out in a week or two. We also have a couple of other guests lined up. And yeah, there's going to be some good conversations coming up. So you guys definitely want to make sure you're coming back next week, checking out the content. In the meantime, head on over to untamingmasculinity.com. Find out all the show notes for this and all of our other episodes, as well as links to our social media. Again, Instagram is where we're really concentrating our efforts. There and Facebook have been our most busy places for posting and action. So make sure you're checking us out there, and just keep coming back. Leave us a rating and review if you get a chance on your podcast player. That really helps us get the word out. And until next week, when we come back with some more great content, we'll leave you with just one question. What are you doing to untame your masculinity?